Hey everyone, it's so great to be back and to see you all once again. I'm feeling so much better and I appreciate all of you who reached out and wished me well. It was very kind and I definitely felt missed. So this week we've got another viewer suggested video, and I'm not really a wrestling fan, but I've had family members who were, and I thought maybe some of you might be too. We're discussing the case of Chris Benoit, who was a well-known wrestler for the WWE. Chris murdered his wife, son, and then took his own life. It's another tragic case of familicide. So let's talk. Sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Born on May 21, 1967 in Montreal, Chris was the son to Michael and Margaret Benoit. From a very early age, he showed an interest in wrestling and wanted to make it in the big leagues, which he accomplished. He began training under the Hart Dynasty, a family with a significant history within professional wrestling. In 1985, he joined the Hart Dynasty's promotion Stampede Wrestling at the age of 18, officially starting a lengthy but successful career. He went on to fight in a number of other wrestling promotions such as New Japan Pro Wrestling, World Championship Wrestling, Extreme Championship Wrestling, and World Wrestling Federation, which later turned into World Wrestling Entertainment. During his time with the New Japan Pro Wrestling, he would meet Eddie Guerrero, a fellow wrestler who was not only a co-worker but almost a brother to him. The relationship was very impactful on Chris and lasted until Guerrero's untimely death in 2005. During his career, he held 22 championships between all promotions. He became a fan favorite and well known in the industry. In 1988, Chris married his first wife, Martina, and the pair had 2 children, David and Megan, before ultimately getting divorced in 1997. That same year, he began an affair with Nancy Sullivan, who was not only a wrestler and manager, but married to one of Benoit's co-workers, Kevin Sullivan. Nancy and Kevin divorced in 1997, the same year she and Benoit got engaged. On February 25, 2000, Nancy gave birth to the couple's only son, Daniel. And on November 23, 2000, Nancy and Chris finally tied the knot. But after 3 years, Nancy would file for divorce and placed a restraining order against him, citing domestic abuse as the main factor and her belief that the marriage was beyond repair. However, these were dropped a few months later the same year. Chris was scheduled to fight in a special pay-per-view event in Texas called Vengeance Night of Champions on June 24, 2007. He was up against fellow wrestler CM Punk, but when he was a no-show, he was replaced in the event. Co-workers and the event managers became concerned when details began to emerge. On Saturday, June 23, 2007, co-worker and friend Chavo Guerrero received a voicemail from Chris at 3:30 to let him know he missed his initial flight and would be late for the show in Texas. Chavo called him back and became worried. Chris sounded groggy and his demeanor was off. The conversation wasn't like one of their usual ones. So after he hung up, he ended up calling Chris again just 12 minutes later, and Benoit didn't answer, so he just left him a message. The call was returned later, with Chris explaining he was on the phone with the airlines setting up his new flight. He was to arrive in Houston at 8 a.m. the next morning and asked Chavo to pick him up. Chris explained he was having a stressful day due to Nancy and David having food poisoning, which is why he had to reschedule his trip. Chavo wished them well and explained he would see him in the morning. It was around this time Chris also called the WWE Talent Relations to explain the situation and that he would be there the following day. However, more concerning things began to happen. On Sunday, June 24th, around 3:50 in the morning, several of Benoit's co-workers received text messages from his and Nancy's phone. There were 5 messages in total. The first, third, fourth, and fifth messages read, quote, "My physical address is 130 Green Meadow Lane, Fayetteville, Georgia, 30215, end quote. The second one was believed to have gone to his neighbor, which read, quote, "The dogs are in the enclosed pool area. Garage side door is open," end quote. When Benoit didn't show up for that night's event, WWE officials were notified of these cryptic text messages. The Fayetteville police were called to perform a welfare check on the family. Around 4:15 p.m., police discovered the bodies of Chris, Nancy, and David Benoit. The WWE officials were notified. On June 25th, WWE Raw was canceled, and in its place was a tribute show dedicated to the life and career of Chris Benoit, given by the head of WWE, Vince McMahon, and fellow wrestlers. But once the ugly truth surfaced, the tribute was quickly removed along with any other mention of Benoit. From evidence present, police determined over a 3-day period Benoit had murdered his wife and 7-year-old son before taking his own life. Investigators speculated Nancy was the first victim based on decomposition. They believed on June 22, 2007, Nancy was killed in an upstairs bedroom of their home. Her limbs were bound and body wrapped in a towel. A copy of the Bible was left next to her. The autopsy revealed cause of death was due to strangulation. The body injuries indicated that Benoit pressed his knee into her back while pulling a cord around her neck. The toxicology report also showed trace amounts of alprazolam and hydrocodone. They were found to be at therapeutic levels and not toxic. She also had a blood alcohol level of 0.184, but coroner was unable to determine if this was due to consumption or due to the level of decomposition of the body. Then on June 23rd, Daniel was next. Daniel was suffocated in his bedroom, and a copy of the Bible was also found next to him. His autopsy showed internal injuries to his throat, but no bruising on the outside. This led some to believe Daniel may have been locked in the crook of his father's arm. Toxicology was performed on him as well, revealing Daniel had sedation levels of Xanax in his system and was likely unconscious when he was murdered. Then, on Sunday, June 24th, Benoit went to his weight room and hung himself. He used the cord of a weight machine. He removed the bar and fashioned a makeshift noose with a towel. He then placed the weights at the highest level and released them, which in turn strangled him. Benoit was found seated against the machine. His toxicology showed he had Xanax and hydrocodone in his system. The last 2 searches on his computer were a passage from the Bible where a son is resurrected, and the second was the fastest and least painful way to break your neck. A memorial for Nancy and Daniel took place in Florida on July 14, 2007. Both were cremated and remain with Nancy's family. Chris had a private ceremony in Alberta on August 6, 2007. He was also cremated. During the search of the home, police found no note, so ultimately had no motive. Benoit's friends and co-workers described him as a loving family man. So, what could have drove him to this point? There are theories surrounding the case, so let's talk. The number one theory is steroid abuse. Anytime we talk about an athlete who comes unhinged, we always believe it's roid rage. It was common knowledge that Benoit took steroids for virtually his entire career. But after the death of Eddie Guerrero, the WWE cracked down on drug testing. It is true that through the toxicology report, it was discovered Benoit had elevated level of testosterone caused by a synthetic testosterone. It was the only one in his system and led many to believe that this was it. However, the medical examiner had deduced that he was being treated for a testosterone deficiency caused by his previous steroid abuse. Also, roid rage is described as erratic and violent behavior, and through the evidence left behind, it is easy to assume that Benoit had premeditated his moves. The next theory involves his home life. As previously stated, Nancy and Chris have had a rocky relationship. It was speculated that the tension between them came from Daniel's supposed poor health. Through rumors, it was believed Daniel may have suffered from Fragile X syndrome, a genetic disorder which affects an individual's intellectual abilities. Reportedly, Daniel's body displayed needle marks. This brought speculation that Daniel was being given a growth hormone due to his family considering him undersized. However, the district attorney Scott Ballard stated no such condition had been reported in the boy's medical records or by his teachers. Nancy's sister also came forward stating Daniel was never diagnosed and the needle marks didn't exist. Coworkers were confident that Daniel had been sick, stating it had been mentioned previously despite the emerging details. Daniel could also not be tested for growth hormones postpartum due to the lack of urine. Chris had a travel partner named Hardcore Holly, who felt steroids weren't the abused drug, it was alcohol. He recalled how much Chris would drink, especially when he and Nancy were having domestic issues. This could have been the case since multiple half-drank wine bottles were found around the home at the time of the murders. But he tested negative for alcohol consumption. The last theory involves his mental state and seems to be the most accepted. Former wrestler and Harvard graduate Christopher Nowinski proposed Benoit may have been suffering from repeated untreated concussions throughout his career. This ultimately would have led to an unstable mental condition. Tests performed on his brain showed it resembled that of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient. The tissue revealed chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. He had damage to all lobes and his brain stem. Benoit's family believes this was responsible for his actions. His mental state apparently hadn't been right since his best friend Eddie Guerrero had died suddenly. They had spent a lot of time together as road partners, and when he passed, Chris was devastated. Everyone recalls that when he got the news, he wailed like true heartbreak had happened and would often sob uncontrollably in private when he was around Eddie's wife. Prior to his death, he began keeping a diary in which he wrote letters to Eddie as a means of coping with his death. Despite his horrible crime, his family maintains Chris was a loving person. His surviving son David still refers to him as his hero and wants to wrestle under the name Chris Benoit Jr. He believes the man he knew wouldn't have done these horrible things. Despite his impactful legacy in professional wrestling, the name Benoit has tarnished, with no chance of him ever being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Wow, lots of thoughts and theories on this one. Like I said in the beginning, I'm not a wrestling fan, but to each their own. I always try to indulge you guys when you shoot me suggestions. Also, not on topic at all, but he died on my birthday, and it's kind of crazy because just the other day I was recalling how Michael Jackson died the day after my birthday and how sad everyone was when we had celebrations because, you know, Michael Jackson had just died and it was crazy because he was such a big star. But it's just something I always recall around my birthday now, and I guess it's just a morbid time. But give me your thoughts in the comments section below and we will chat. Also, if you feel so inclined, please give it a thumbs up and let YouTube know you want more. And finally, if you're not subscribed yet, join us. We would love to have you under the ash tree. Shout out to the viewer who gave me that closing line, by the way. I love it. As always, my friends, I appreciate you all. Your support is undying and you do not go unnoticed. Thank you for being a great community, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.